we come now to the third and the fourth miracle. I mentioned the Quran, we talked about 10 miracles. The third and the fourth miracles is the miracle of the drought. There was no water, nothing, and the land and the farm was threatened. And also the miracle of the decrease of fruits and harvests. Although there were some agriculture and rain, yet there were, to our surprise, decrease of fruits and harvest. Moving to the fifth miracle, that is the flood. The Nile flooded and drowned their houses, fields, farms, and so on. When Moses threatened them, so they came appealing to Moses, peace be upon him. So, as a response, he invoked Allah's mercy for help, so they were saved, yet they relapsed. The sixth sign is the sign of the locusts. Again, they broke their promises, as usual. The locust came and it devours all their farms, all their plants and so on. So again, they appealed to Moses to stop and to appeal to God to stop this, which he did, yet they did not take the lesson and they relapsed. Then Dr. Aram talks consequently about the seventh, the eighth, and the ninth miracle. He talks about the lice, frogs, and the blood. But he emphasizes a very important point. Dr. Aram says that anyone who is tracing these 10 miracles, he noticed that they are intensifying and they are more effective one by one. The one to come next to the first one is more effective, more hurting, and so on. So we talk about the flood, then we talk about the lice, we talk about frogs, then we talk about blood that even the Nile turned to be blood, so they couldn't neither drink nor wash themselves, and so on. The 10th sign is sea split. Pharaoh permitted them to leave, then he regretted that and he pursued them. So God splitted sea for them. That is the Pharaoh and his officials and his people. And then they were drowned. A question is raised by Dr. Gharama, which he answered. The question that he raised is, are these signs in book of Exodus, these signs in the book of Exodus respond to his question above by saying yes and no? These signs, do they compared to the Quranic versions or not? So as an answer he said yes and no. How can that be? Yes and no in the signs that signs like staff, the radiant hand, the sea split, the same. But between the sign 1 to 10, they relate other signs. They name them plagues. So that's why Dr. Gharam says yes and no, that yes, certain signs, certain miracles were similar to Quranic version, but others are different. Number 1, the first plague, they talk about the plagues. So the first plagues, and if you go back to in chapter 7, phrase 19, they say that Moses, and sometimes they say Aaron. They are hesitant. Sometimes they say Moses, and sometimes they say it was Aaron. Anyhow, that either Moses or Aaron, this is according to Exodus, struck the Nile with staff. So water turned to blood. Pharaoh asked sorcerer, so they did the same. And people dug along the Nile for water to drink, hinting they defeated Moses and Aaron. Here Dr. Gharama comments. He's saying that instead of elevating the problem, the Pharaoh ordered the sources to do the challenge and to make the suffering doubled by getting more blood and turning the more blood, which is really more effective. But the important thing is that they try to deceive themselves that we defeated Moses and Aaron at the cost of the people who will suffer as a result of doubling the effect. The second plague is frogs. Aaron struck again the Nile, so frogs came out of the Nile and entered their bedrooms and their houses everywhere. So sorcerer did the same. Thus, and this is an important comment by Dr. Arama, this is thus the scribe, not realizing harm will be multiplied. The scribe is concentrating that, look, the sorcerer managed to defeat and to challenge Moses by getting even more frogs, neglecting or ignoring or not noticing that just the opposite. They intensify the situation. They worsen the situation by making the people suffering more and more. Number 3, the third plague, is the gnats. It's kind of flies or insects. They call it gnats. It spread all over. A sorcerer couldn't couldn't challenge. They just kept saying, "This is the finger of God." Admitting that they couldn't compete when it comes to this plague of gnats. But we know that sorcerers have already been crucified by Pharaoh. So here there is a contradiction, really. This version in the book of Exodus, they keep talking about sorcerer, but we know that Pharaoh has ordered them to be crucified at the palm tree's trunk. So how can that be conceived? I don't know. So sorcerers have already been crucified. They are supposed to be being crucified, dead by Pharaoh. All is this, and this is the comment and clarification by Dr. Harama. This is the result of what they call verbal memories. Memories based upon something said, not something documented and written and authenticated. So all is this due to the scribes' verbal memories and sometimes fabricated narration, all gathered in a book of Exodus. Number 4, the plague of swarms of flies. As if they say it's not enough to have lice, let's have also flies. Flies, should take share in these plagues. Nothing was mentioned here about sorcerers, that they participated or this. When it comes to the 5th plague, that is livestock destruction. Lord said to Moses, and if you allow us to read, to be exact, to read on page 102, phrase number 9 in the book of Exodus, it reads as follows. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the Pharaoh and say to him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews," again, the God of the Hebrews, the stigma of chosen people is appearing now, says, "Let my people go so they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them back, the hand of the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses, donkeys, and camels, and on your cattle, and sheep, and goats. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and that of Egypt, so that no animal belonging to the Israelite will die." It continues to say, "The Lord set a time and said, tomorrow the Lord will do this in the land. And the next day the Lord did it. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one of the animal belonging to the Israelite died. Pharaoh sent men to investigate and found that not even one of the animals of the Israelite had died. Yet his heart was unyielding, and he would not let the people go." This is referring to the fifth plague, the livestock destruction. When we come again to the sixth plague, that is festering boils, that is certain of wounds that is really gushing out pus. We were told that he took a handful of ash and threw it, and as a result, these boils, the kind of wounds, and it was full of pus. It came to affect the people and even the animals. So this is when we talk about the boils. This is what we read in the book of Exodus, page 102, and the phrase says, "The plague of boils. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take handfuls of soot from a furnace and have Moses toss it into the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, and festering boils, that is boils that is gushing pus, will break out on men and animals. Even animals were not saved throughout the land. So they took soot from a furnace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses tossed it into the air, and the festering boils broke out on men and animals, and so on and so forth, and even the magicians. So of course, the obvious comment that we hear from Dr. Aram is these animals are supposed to have died in the plagues that happened before, yet they are also mentioned here. So they received maybe 3 or 5 kind of deaths. They died more than one time. So they are supposed that they have died, but here we have noticed that, and we notice that they are dying for the 5th time. And when they are asked, they say, well, those cattle and animals who died were those which were in the fields, but the boils happened to the animals in the houses. So do they stand up to this? We will notice later on that even they don't stand up to this. So the whole animals were destroyed, whether in the field or in the houses. Of course, when he talks about festering boils, we notice that the sorcerer couldn't confront Moses because even they themselves were hit by these festering boils. Now we come to the 5th plague, hail falling. Pharaoh did not listen, did not take a lesson, did not yield. So cattle died for the 3rd time. Again, there is a repetition, and really inexplicable that we notice that these cattle dies more than once. It's enough to die once, but here they are related in different plagues that they died again and again and again. Cattle supposed to have died in the field and in the houses by boils. So they died whether they were in the fields by hail and falling, and those who were in the houses, they died by boils. The 8th plague is the locusts. Locusts invaded all plants and fruits and trees left by hail. So what's left that was not affected by a hail falling was devoured by the locust. Thus cattle died for the 4th time, because we know cattle are related to take pasture from the field. The 9th plague is the dense darkness. A dense darkness engulfed the whole places of the Egyptian, with the exception of the areas inhabited by the Israelites. So there was a very dense darkness, could see nothing, that engulfed all the places and of the Egyptians. Of course, on the other hand, nothing happened, and there was light on the places inhabited by the Israelites. The last plague, the 10th plague, is the death of the firstborn. This is a story, really. It is amazing, again, a story, astonishing story. Exodus narrates as follows. Since Pharaoh did not respect Israel, the firstborn of God, so God will kill Pharaoh firstborn as a revenge, and all of the Egyptians also the firstborn of the cattle. So even animals and cattle were not saved. Their firstborn should also receive this punishment. In that night, Pharaoh permitted the children of Israel to depart. So based on a revelation from God to Moses, Israelites ordered their women to borrow, quote unquote, to borrow gold, jewelry, articles, and not tell the Egyptian ladies of their fleeing. What is really worst is that another decision from God that he, and sometimes God, angel, sometimes they say it was God, sometimes they say it is the God angel, will come to each Egyptian house to kill the firstborn, causing lamentation in each house. The story goes on to say how to distinguish houses, the houses of the Egyptians from the houses of the Israelites. The book of Exodus relates to us that they were ordered to slaughter a sheep or a goat, then put the blood on the side of the door frames and also on the door steps in order to distinguish the house of the Egyptian from the house of the Israelite. Of course, we should stop here, and say, whether it is God or God angel, how couldn't he distinguish between the house of the Israelite and the house of the Egyptian? We leave it to you, dear viewers and dear participants, to ponder about and think about. The book of Exodus relates then the sea split and drowning of the Pharaoh and his officials and his people. However, Exodus does not mention that God saved Pharaoh. So yes, they admit that he was drowned, but they don't admit or even relate or mention that God saved Pharaoh's body in order to be a lesson for people to come. And then Dr. Garama reminds us that anyone who would have the chance to visit the Cairo Museum, he could see the remnant or the remaining of the body in this museum. And Dr. Garama emphasizes that when we go or make a kind of survey concerning the book of Exodus, we notice that the book of Exodus is compiled of, and I am sorry to say it, but this is the fact, contradictory narrations, stories, events, to the extent that one story, and within few pages from the Holy Bible, we notice a complete different version or event or story. So this and his advice that these contradictions and these discrepancies, they should be brought to light to truth seekers, because after all, those who believe in the Torah, they are, I would say, hiding behind the Torah, in the sense that they consider that it is the infallible words of God. So, especially those who have inquisitive minds among them, and those who are objective and have objective mind, when these kind of discrepancies and contradictions are clarified or shown to them, surely maybe they will give another consideration for what they used to believe as a mere facts. So maybe they will rethink about things that they took for granted. And we should not despair, because clarifying this point or pinpointing this event will clarify a lot of the misconceptions or things taken for granted. This is one thing. Another thing, we notice that when we go through the book of Exodus, we notice it talks about certain stations that the children of Israel or the Israelite has gone through in their exodus, in their trip. Dr. Gharama emphasizes that it's not that important to know the name of these stations, but these event and these stations again should be known and should be obvious to people who would like to clarify things related to this thing. After that, Dr. Harama comes to talk about that in the first month of their exodus, we noticed that they came to settle in a place where they had about 70 palm trees and 12 water wells. So in the first month of their exodus, the Israelites settled temporarily at a place where there were 70 palm trees and 12 water wells. So if we rely on their statistics that there were 2 million of them, and those who were fighting, maybe more than 600,000, but as a total, as a people, as a nation, we are talking about approximately 2 million of them. If we take this into consideration, or if we take their statistics for granted, we will end up that each palm tree will shade approximately 30,000 of them, not to mention their livestock, which is really beyond imagination, which is really difficult to conceive. After that, Dr. Gharama comes to talk about the grumbling of the Israelites. When I say grumbling, and when he said the grumbling, he is referring that they are always in rejection to the instructions coming from God and from their prophets, always on the opposite side, always trying to mutinize against these laws, revealed to them through their prophets. So, as proof, Dr. Gharama, he refers us to page 116, phrase 16. And if you allow me, dear viewers and dear participants, I will just, in a very quick way, I will just go through this relevant phrase, which says, it comes under the title, "In the Desert of Sin." That is a place in Sinai. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." So again, here's the grumbling. If you compare it to the Islamic concepts, in the sense that when there is a lack of water, you notice that in the Muslims, in complete kind of humbleness, they would invoke God for help, for rain, and so on. While here we find kind of mutiny and kind of rejection and kind of grumbling, towards their prophets, namely Moses and Aaron. Anyhow, the story continues that Moses invoked Allah help, and he prays to God for help, and of course help came in two forms: in the form of the manna and quails as a food, and also in the form of 12 fountains that came out of the rock. The rock here, Dr. Gharama comes to pause for a while to comment about the rock, the term rock, and the difference between rock and stone. So it is also related that Moses struck the stone, so water gushed out. However, here the word rock is used, and there exists a difference between a rock and a stone. The former, that is the rock, is big and heavy in weight and cannot be removed easily. So how can that they used to wander and to move and to from place with it for 40 years? Yes, this is really kind of drawing attention that it is really difficult to imagine that they would carry a rock in its size and coming and walking and moving with it from place to place for 40 years. So again, we leave it to you, dear viewers and dear participants, to come to the conclusion that certain events, certain narration that we hear is really difficult to conceive. After that, we talk about the Masa and Meribah. This refers us to page 118. If you allow me just to go very quickly through what is written here about this event. It reads as follows: strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massa and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord amongst us or not? So there are two concepts: the concept of quarreling and the concept of testing. And what to test? They are testing or questioning the existence of God with them. I mean, how can a person even have the slightest doubt about the existence of God, with his creatures? And that is these two concepts: the question of testing. Witness to this is when they say, is the Lord among us or not? And also this question of quarreling and trying to blame Moses and Aaron. Of course, anyhow, their request was settled, and they started to enjoy the manna and the quail. And also they had this spring and fountains coming out through Moses, peace be upon him. Again, Dr. Gharama reminds us and make kind of comparison that how impotent and how really, ingratitude. You notice ingratitude is reflected on their behaviors towards God himself and towards prophets like Moses and Aaron, questioning when it comes to the water and the food. On the other side, Dr. Gharama reminds us of the Islamic tradition. When there is a lack of water, you notice that in a complete, submissive, humble, polite way, the Muslims will run to pray and to praise the Lord and to invoke his help for water. So we have two kind of completely different, behavior. Now we come to a very important event. It is at Mount Sinai. Muslims know it to be Mount of Tur. But we will not, make a question of it about naming, But in the Bible, it's called the Mount of Sinai. In the Holy Quran, it is stated that it is the Mount of Tur. So anyhow, the important is the story itself. Again, Dr. Gharama emphasizes very clearly, again, some kind of contradictory event and story within the story. within this story. So here the scribes introduce many mixed up versions of the story, ending up in the stated 40 days and night mentioned earlier, after which Moses was given the Torah, which includes the 10 commandments containing the injunctions and the covenant that, unlike Muslims who abide by it, they broke the covenant. Under the title Moses Meets with God, here one noticed a repetition and differences, not only repetition, but also differences in the version related to Moses meeting God. First, we are told that Moses went up the mount, so God ordered and descend and come after 3 days with the Israelites. Then Moses and Aaron went up. God gave the commandments and gave them also the covenants and the laws or the injunctions, that is lawful, things which is lawful and unlawful, things allowed and not allowed, related to the certain topic or issue, like servants, how to deal with servants, how to deal with livestock, how about the Sabbath day, about their feast, and so on. So Dr. Gharama come to emphasize to us that again, with the Torah, there comes the 10 Commandments, and with the 10 Commandments, we have certain injunctions related, to jurisprudence, what to do, what not to do, and also the covenants between God and his creatures. However, few pages later, and to be exact, in phrase number 24, a few pages later, we go back to square one, where the same event is repeated with different happenings, where it's not any longer Moses and Aaron. Now we have new companions. So you notice that within the same sequence, you notice completely different version, to the extent that any ordinary reader will be confused whom to believe. To believe the story that it was Moses and Aaron who went up, or to believe the second version that we are talking about Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. They are, these two figures, Nadab and Abihu, are introduced to the scene and joined Moses and Aaron in going up. We are told that those two sons of Aaron were righteous, religious, yet God burnt them with fire. They corrupted. So they were pictured to us that they were godly people, righteous people, and then suddenly we are told that God punished them with fire because they are corrupt. These kind of contradictory events really makes any ordinary reader is bewildered and confused. Of course, not to mention that also this happens every now and then. Here, Dr. Gharama emphasizes a very important point. Here, he talks about, it seems that these kind of discrepancies reflects a kind of war within the Holy Book. Exemplified, this war from within is exemplified in the exchange slanderer between the clan or the tribes of Judah and Levites. So to say it again, the reasoning or some certain of the reasoning for these kind of contradictory events, maybe they reflects a conflict that is happening from within in the Bible, reflected by two, I will say, warring tribes or clans, the clans of Judah and the clans of Levites. Then we were reminded by Dr. Gharama, may Allah bless him and bless his effort. We will remind us that not to use sarcasm and not to be sarcastic. This is a very important message to all of us, whether viewers, participants, any persons, that when it comes to, I will say, not arguing, but exchanging views with the people of the book, we are forbidden to be sarcastics and to come to mind or to kind to ridicule the people we are trying to clarify. So he emphasized it here to his students that we should not be sarcastics, and our style should be in a very polite way, because after all, this course is a scientific course based upon rational and based upon mere facts. So sarcasm and irony should be away from it, and we just, the role of all those who are trying to clarify the truth, capital T, should be rational, not only polite, over polite, and they should respect the thought and the personality of the others. Here, this reminds us of a Quranic, style that in the Quran we are told that to deal and to debate with the people of the book in a very kind exhortation. Allah warns us, don't debate or exchange views with the people of the book except with kind exhortation. This is a kind of Quranic guidance that Dr. Karama reminds all of us of. Thus, many hearts will be guided when this kind of politeness, respect, kind of mutual, rational exchange of views, when it is done, surely the other side will use his or her rational, and who knows, maybe he or she will be guided to the truth and will reconsider many of the things that he or she is taking for granted. Seeing God. Under this title, this refers us to chapter 24. It states that Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and even 70 of the elders of Israel saw the God of Israel. Here, Dr. Harama pauses for some times because he came to clarify to us kind of contradiction, that once we are told that no one could see God, and if anyone see God, he or she will be perished, that is destroyed. While here in this chapter, in chapter 24, we are told that Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and even 70 of the elders of Israel saw the God of Israel. And again, this is a God of Israel, remind us of what we said previously, that they don't, in their dictionary, they don't have the term the God of the world and so on. No, they have the God of Israel, the God of the soldier, and the God, and so like. While we hear of a previous threat that if they see God, they will perish, found in under the title Moses meets with God. So this kind of threat that God say that if they see God, they will perish. This can be found under the section here entitled Moses meets with God. This is what it reads. But the priest and people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them. So, who to believe? To believe the version that though they saw God of Israel, or to believe this concept that no one will see God, otherwise he or she will be perished. This leads us to come to talk about the 40 days and 40 nights. When we say 40 days and 40 nights, we refer that then they admit at last, that is the scribes, that Moses went up the mount where he stayed 40 days and 40 nights. Then we come to something which is really cannot be accepted even. And that is to accuse a prophet, not an ordinary person, but a prophet, that is Aaron, to accuse him that he, the one who made up this calf, the golden calf, and he used, the earrings and all the jewels and so on from the ladies of the people. So under Aaron and the calf, under this title, we come to know that Aaron, or we are come to be told that Aaron, who was supposed to be with Moses up in the mount, is pictured here ordering men to collect gold earrings from their women, so to turn it into an idol, cast in the shape of a calf. This is really, it can't be. Yet it is mentioned, and even in the title, it is mentioned. Then he made an altar in front of the calf and announced. So again, this continue to ridicule and to degrade Moses, Aaron, peace be upon him, by saying that he said, tomorrow is the feast for the Lord, that is the calf, the golden calf, and to indulge in, and dear viewers, listen to this word, revelry. How can a godly, a sublime, a noble prophet would invite his people not only to worship the calf and so on, but also to enjoy themselves to the extent of indulging in revelry? Then Dr. Ram, a question. Where is the Samaritan here? There is no mentioning at all. Where does the Samaritan stand here? No mentioning of him whatsoever. And we know in the previous episodes that it was the Samaritan who, made this golden calf. How could such acts be attributed to a sublime prophet like Aaron? We leave it to you, dear viewers and participants, to come to your conclusion. Under the title God's Wrath, that is anger, they again narrate that when they worshipped the calf, God got angry and said, that is God, I will not accompany you from now on. The story states that when they were crossing Sinai desert, a pillar of cloud during the day. So during the day, they say that God is with them, but exemplified in a kind of cloud during the day, and in a kind of column of fire during the night, claiming to be God. This is what they claim. They then relate that Moses wept and told God that the Israelites no longer beautify themselves, nor bathe. So please change your mind. Again, now the degradation, reached. May God forgive us. Now they try to, to offend God, in the sense that they picture God that he's like a person, who would take a decision and then will think about it. Will he execute it or not? So he said, okay, you children of Israel, stop ornament, all kind of ornament, until I think and decide to go with you or not. How can God, such things are to be attributed to human beings, to creatures, but not to God, who might change his mind. He told them to remove all their ornaments till he make his decision. Then after he thought, God forgive us, then he agreed to go with them. Does the book of Exodus, relate that God got angry with Aaron for the claimed making of the idol, or for enabling them to celebrate indulging in revelry? Nothing related to this. So they just deny that God did not got angry when the people started to worship the golden calf, and whom they claimed was done by Aaron. And also when they again accused Aaron that he announced to them to celebrate and to indulge in revelry. Nothing whatsoever related to this was mentioned whatsoever. What the book relates instead is that Moses ordered the Levites to kill a number of them, so God's wrath was removed from the rest. This is the expiation for the sin, that a group of the Levites would be killed in order to remove God's wrath. Now we come to a very important heading and event, and that is Moses and the glory of the Lord. When we come to this story, throughout Exodus, we read, Moses saw the Lord face to face. Israelite saw God on a blue, transparent ruby, etc. While in chapter 33, Moses asked God, show me your glory. God answered, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. It is really confusing. Once they talk that they saw God face to face, and another in chapter 33, we are told that, as a response to the request made by Moses when he said, show me your glory, as a response, we read, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. Again, it doesn't need any comment, it talks for itself. Dr. Karama introduced that so they have to invent certain story, in order to cover up of this for this contradiction. So they came with the story of the cleft in the rock. The story goes like this. They say that God put Moses in a cleft in the rock, and then he covered his eyes with his hand, so Moses would not be able to see the face of God, but to see his back and not his face. Anyhow, this leads us to talk about the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, it is stated in the Holy Quran. We notice that the 10 Commandments are stated in the Holy Quran in more than one place. It is stated in the chapter of Al-An'am. It is also stated in the chapter of Al-Isra, 10 of them. The first and important one is related to monotheism, the oneness of God. The last, fulfilling the covenant of God. This includes what is lawful and unlawful. But when we talk about the Holy Bible, related, in relation to the 10 Commandments, it is mentioned, but in brief. In the Holy Quran, it is mentioned with a very clear instructions. But in the Bible, it is just mentioned very brief, as if say, don't kill, don't commit adultery, things like that. So it is mentioned in the Holy Bible, but in brief, as if they don't remember the details. For example, they shall not kill, they shall not commit adultery, they shall not steal, etc. Here we come to talk about the 10 Commandments, that with the exact wording, that you shall have no other gods before me. This reflects monotheism. And this reminds us of a Quranic verse which says, God has decreed that you worship none but him and be kind to your parents. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything, the heaven, the sky, the earth, or water. Then Dr. Gharama introduces a very important and interesting event related to this. He refers the audience and the viewers and the participant in the course to a story related by the well-known previous priest and now present caller to Allah, that is Yusuf Estes.
The second commandment you have clearly says, thou shalt not make any idol, any graven image of anything that creeps upon the earth, swims in the sea beneath, or flies in the air above. And I was sitting in a church one time, sitting there in the morning service, watching, the preacher talk. And, they go on and on and on. And sometimes you lose your train of thought. I was looking. Whoa! On the front of the podium, there was a fish. A fish. For the symbol, make you fishers of men. It had a fish. I said, whoa. Then I looked up above his head at the big stained glass window, and it had a dove. And he had the olive branch in his mouth. The dove is flying, the bird, I said, whoa. And then I look over here, and there's a cross with a man hanging on it. I said, wow, they didn't miss a single one. They got them all. Something walking on the earth, something swimming in the sea beneath, something flying in the air above. So look at these two things. Clearly, the first two of the 10 Commandments, bang, bang, boom.
So this is kind of opposing the instruction that suppose and that, does not allow or does not encourage the idol. After all, we just read to you, dear viewers, you shall not make for yourself an idol. So even idols are not, allowed. Then number 3, you shall not bow down to them or even worship them. So even bowing down to the idols and worshipping them is completely forbidden, and it is clearly stated in the 10 Commandments. Here Dr. Karama pauses to remind all of us that this happening should be used rather than misused, should be used by the callers to the truth, the callers to God, that if such things are clarified to the people and are reminded that in the Bible it is not allowed to make idols, it's not allowed to bow for them or worship them, yet today's churches are full of idols, whether represented in the idols shown in the sky or the earth or the sea. So it is innated. They call it innated disposition, al-fitra. It is innated that every person, if he or she used his inquisitive mind and rational rather than just preconcepts or things that he inherited or came to believe, if he or she used his common sense, surely he will come to the conclusion that this really worth wondering about. How can such things are not allowed, yet we notice that they exist in nearly all the church. Then he gave an example, a concrete example, that who imagined, one day that Ikrimah, a believer, will come out of Abu Jahl, who was a very, a great enemy to Islam. And also, who imagined that someone like Khalid ibn al-Walid will, be truthful. So we should not have despair, and we should not, have kind of, despair that nobody will be guided. No, every person is liable to be guided as long as we give the truth in a very polite, rational way, show respect to the other people. And then he, give the good tidings to the participant and also to you, dear viewers, that many people are guided daily. We notice it. So he prayed to God that all of you will be, many human souls will be guided through you one day, especially when you enrich yourself with this information that you are finding in this course. So may Allah bless Dr. Karama for this great project. Number 4, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. So we are reminded that Dr. Gharama compared this to a prophetic hadith which says that whoever dare to build or to make up stories that saying that the Prophet said it and it was not said by the Prophet, let him be prepared to get his place in hellfire. So how about lying, against God? This is really a big sin. You shall not, I'll read it again, you shall not, this is number 4, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. It is something not easy, I hope that we should, take this into consideration. Number 5, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Here Dr. Gharama mentioned or commented that we don't have such thing, as glorifying or giving certain importance to the Sabbath day. So maybe it is part of the distortions that, happening every now and then. Number 6, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord is giving you. This is again remind us of a very important Quranic verse which says that when it comes to the parents, be kind to the parents. Number 7, you shall not murder. Number 8, you shall not commit adultery. Number 9, you shall not steal. And, we notice that it is mentioned briefly without any, certain description or elaboration, just mentioned like this. Number 10, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbors. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, wife, manservant, maid servant, oxes, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And that is to be overkind to your neighbor and to respect all the properties and everything belonging to your neighbor. Dr. Gharama come to talk about certain pieces that were said in Exodus. He called it advices. Advices, he mentioned advices stated that, for example, he quotes, don't oppress a stranger nor annoy him. So we are told one of the pieces of advices given to the Israelite in the book of Exodus is this: don't oppress a stranger nor annoy him. Then there is a very interesting comment by Dr. Gharama, say that, and really it's worth mentioning that it is really strange that they would keep this verse and did not distort it or even delete it, because the stigma of the chosen people is just is dominating their thinking. Yet we find that maybe, as they said, it slipped out of the net. We find that you should not oppress strangers, because the whole concept they have is that, well, as the kind of chosen people, but all the other Gentiles, you could practice anything, whether oppression or annoyance or whatever. However, we still have this stated for maybe Allah destined, I'm sure, that certain facts will be mentioned, and then this is the chance for the caller to Allah to pinpoint these things and tell them, well, are you practicing this? Are you doing this? Are you abiding by what is mentioned in the Torah? Anyhow, so it is strange that such advice not deleted in favor of the chosen people. Again, then we read, so if their religious men are reminded of such advices and instructions compared to the oppression practices under the banner of chosen people, maybe they will reconsider many practices and be guided. You see, this is off the point, but I must say it. I admire the optimistic trend of Dr. Gharama, reflected in this comment, that the religious people who respect the Torah and so on, why should we despair, of their guidance? We should not have despair, and we should not despair, and we should not lose hope, because maybe if they are reminded of such advices, maybe they will give it another thought, and they say, yes, it is mentioned here that we should be kind to our strangers, we should not oppress strangers, we should not annul, because as it's mentioned in the Bible that they were strangers one day in the land of Egypt. With this, we have finished studying the book of Exodus, noticing it focuses on the concept of chosen people, the dramatization of the events, of the numbers, and so on, all are towards the effect of the chosen people concept or stigma, and details event related to figures, eras, and even places, and so on. So with this we conclude. Looking forward to seeing you, dear viewers and dear participants, in coming episodes. Until then, we leave you in the care of God. Assalamu alaikum.
أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام